Hello, welcome to another Sunday video, another weekly summary of what we've been going through. This week was the Thanksgiving week. I hope you all had a wonderful time, and I hope you all enjoyed your time with family or whoever you spend it with, and that you all stay safe and during these times. Okay, this week what we went through was the relationship of God and human minds and rationality and something like that. Okay, let's start. All right, the first thing I would like to go over is when Adam, the first created man, committed the sin, the first sin ever, and from that people, humans, they were, severed. They were cut from God. And, we couldn't no longer just easily connect with God at that point, ever since. Okay. During the medieval, people call it the Dark Ages. Back during those times like that, people were too busy surviving to, question things like God and creation and those sorts of stuff. They were too busy, just trying to survive, and they're too caught up with their lives that they couldn't investigate or study things like that. During those times, back in the medieval, Dark Ages, the church had the strongest power. I'm sure you all learned that in history, but during a time like that, people didn't really care too much about creation or God or their minds, things like that. They could just they just listened to whatever the church had to say, and they didn't have to think any further about it. Okay, when the Renaissance rolled around, people had more chances, they had more time and all that to think more about such topics. They had more opportunities and luxuries to pursue science, information, knowledge, things like that. And one of the things that was the first thing they started thinking about was thing like what was the existence of humankind. Okay, it's something everybody goes, it's something everybody thinks about at least once or twice in their life, And when we, question who we are, what are human beings, what are people, what's the human mind, what's the human soul, things like that. When you question things like that without a concrete idea, things like why we're born, why we live, and what happens after we die, things like that can't be answered. Like I said earlier, during the Middle Ages, people just naturally accepted what the Bible said, what the church had to say. And sometimes, well, a lot of times, that wasn't ideal, because the church might, they did say something that says, and they lie about it being the gospel, but it really isn't. They use the Bible and words of God for their own benefit, and things like that happened. But the point is that people didn't think too much. Well, when the Renaissance came, the church started losing more and more power, and people could start thinking wild stuff without anybody bothering them or nothing. And one thing they started doing was, they started stop taking what the Bible had to tell them. They stopped counting the Bible. They stopped using that for their information, and they started to only depend on human rationality and immediate knowledges, that they can see right through, and that's something that faith can't do, because faith is like, it's different for everyone. It's not something that's like 1 + 1 = 2. Well, it is, but it's not something that you can just measure like like a data or nothing, because God is alive and God is unique for everyone, just as every human being is unique. Okay, when they stopped listening to what the Bible had to say, things like why we're born, why we live, what happens after we die, things like that, it became the unsolvable ultimate questions. Okay. Last week, what we went through was, and what we learned was that Jesus Christ is God, and that anybody that chose to accept that Jesus is God, they're given salvation, and they become children of God. All right, let's read John chapter 1, verse 9 through 13. Okay. That was the true light, which light every man that come into the world. He was in the world, and the world was made by him, and the world knew him not. He came unto his own, and his own received him not. But as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God, even to them that believe on his own name, which were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God. Amen. That's John chapter 1, verse 9 through 13, and it just says it right there, what happens to people that believe in Christ. And, and this is the Word of God, so we can trust it. All right. And another important thing that we learned, we made sure we know last week, was that after receiving Christ, we realized that before the beginning, before God created the earth and everything that came along, we were already planned by God. Okay, let's turn to Ephesians chapter 1, verse 4 through 7. According as he has chosen us in him before the foundation of the world, that we should be holy and without blame before him in love, having predestinated us unto the adoption of children by Jesus Christ to himself, according to the good pleasure of his will, to the praise of the glorious grace wherein he hath made us accepted in the beloved, in whom we have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of sins, according to the riches of his grace. Amen. And just like, verse from John, Ephesians, this is the Bible, so you can trust it. You can be sure to trust it if you're not sure about anything. All right, but when you live, as you grow up and as you gain more knowledge and you start becoming aware of what is going on around the world, and what's happening, how things are, what is politics or science or anything like that. There's a lot of conflicting informations. There's lots of conflicting points of views. And in today's world, well, as a Christian, I'm sure everyone experienced in one way or another. But today, the gospel, what the Bible tells you, it's not allowed. It's not accepted in this world. You can't be open about it. It's not we know that the Bible is the truth. And we know that it's the truth that's always going to hold up because it's the truth. It's never going to change. But today, it's not seen as that. It's looked at as another belief. It's looked at as another religion people have. And it's seen as something that's not objective. Well, one thing you have to keep in mind is that, well, we know it's the truth, but things like the salvation, things like Christ, who He is and what He did for us, things like that, you can't believe in them unless you have faith in God. You can know about it, but you're never going to believe it if you don't have faith. And that's one thing you have to keep in mind. Alright, in today's world, it's a real bad situation for Christians. I suppose it always happened ever since the beginning of time, but right now it's very rough on people right now. It's very rough for Christians. The world is pounding down on them. And Christians, they have to persevere. And with all this conflicting facts and all this conflicting ideas, you might be wondering, okay, I believe in Christ, but how am I supposed to know my faith is the right one? How are we supposed to know, I'm believing in the truth? Okay. The world we live in today is a place where truth doesn't matter. We're living in a time where people believe in anything. They can have faith in anything, whether it's truth or not. Whether it's truth is not important to them. It's not important to the world. Well, let's start looking at how it came down to that. One thing that Christians always have to keep in their head, they always have to keep in their mind, is that you need to know, you need to be able to confirm that your faith is based on the truth, and the truth being the Bible, the gospel. And whether your faith is leading your life, instead of letting the world around you and what's happening in your life take hold of your faith. Okay, so what I'm saying here right now is that your faith has to be in the one in charge. You can't compromise your faith. You can't just take it apart and just rearrange it, whatever that is convenient to what's happening around you, what the world is telling you to. That can't be what's happening. Okay. True Christians live with their faith. Okay. Leading them, with the gospel telling them what to do, with Christ, with God, telling them what to do. Like just random, simple practitioners of religion. They just believe whatever that is convenient to them. And what they believe in are compromised. And it's very easy for people who call themselves Christians to just turn out to be just random, simple, practitioners of religion who just does it, out of habit, out of, conditioning, something like that. Not because they actively chose to, not because they really truly believe in it. And that's something all Christians have to watch out for. Okay. Well, you might be wondering, Okay, we're living in this world where nothing matters, where nothing, anything can be whatever. There's no truth, whatever. Yeah. How did we get here? What the world, what did it happen so that we're living in a place like this? We have to, go back and take a look at history. What happened to the human minds? What happened to the way people think? How, the information people got, the knowledge people got, and we have to take a look at that. All right, in just a couple of thousand years, I guess since the beginning of time, when people rolled around. Well, scientifically, it says like millions of years and all that, but how long it really was doesn't really matter, does it? Because God, He's always present in every moment in time. And what's million years to us is just, an instant for God, and vice versa, and all that. So how long things are really doesn't matter. What matters is the things that happen that impact us, millions of years that can, time can pass for like millions of years, and if nothing happens during those million years, it doesn't matter, does it? It's not important. It's not important as like one instance that may be, yeah, I'm just rambling right now, but okay, we have to in just a couple of thousand years from now till thousands of years back, human rationality, the human reasoning, things like that, and intelligence, and just overall the way people think, they went under massive changes, and you have to you have to actively look into those. You have to examine the changes that people went through, the collective intelligence went through, and what happened as a result. We can't understand what our faith truly is in a world like this. We can't understand. We can't be for sure what our faith are really like in this world. What's the place it has in this world today? Okay. When you look at the development of human intelligence throughout the history, starting from the beginning, when man, first sinned, you can see that people were like against God, and they kept on distancing further away from God. Even back then, since the beginning, people have been doing like that. Okay. And I'm sure you can see that even today, people are still trying to distance further away from God. And it's clear as day, if you just look at the big picture, what the world is going through. That the world is against God. It's easy to realize that. Back in time, there was this one guy. His name was Thomas Aquinas. He came up with this new idea. He proposed a view that was never seen before. People didn't have such idea before. Okay, man, back then when he was kicking, it was during the era where the church had all the control over everybody. And, it was as strong as ever. And what Thomas Aquinas proposed was that God is on a level separate from us, from like the materialistic, natural world. God was above it. Okay, and with this idea, what people got from it was that they decided that they, people, could be separate from God in their lives. Before then, God was in, the church, I guess, and and by association, God was part of their lives, every day, every moment, and that was pretty much how they lived. But with Thomas Aquinas' idea, people came up with this idea that that doesn't have to be the case. God can just stay up there, and we can just stay down here, and we can just mind our own businesses. And that's what they thought. Okay. And later, in later time, this dude named Descartes, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, but he came around and, he wanted to find out the reason behind existence of humans and why we're here, that sort of question. And what he came down with was that his conclusion was that he thinks, therefore he is. And by just that itself doesn't really say anything, but it was, if you think about it, it really doesn't. It's so obvious. But that was the biggest answer he could come up with. But if you look further into context, you can, make out what he wanted to say. Alright, hold up. Okay, what I wanted to say, through the views of a, Christian, basically, could be that even though human rationality, developed tremendously, people have this natural desire, they have this natural desire, to fill in the emptiness in their hearts, and that's supposed to be filled by God, but that can't be suppressed or satisfied with just rationality. You have to have connection with God to satisfy that emptiness. And everybody naturally has that, and you can just look through every culture throughout the world, from every groups of people, that hunger for spirituality, that hunger for God is, it's found in everywhere. Everybody has it, naturally. And unlike other animals, humans are irrational, intelligent beings. And because humans can't think, and they have minds, we're not just balls of flesh that's acting by instinct. And therefore, humans can pursue God, and therefore humans are spiritual beings. And it's not too far-fetched to think like that, considering that Descartes was a sincere Christian. However, what people got from his take was that, just like how back then, during the Middle Ages and all that, how God was the center of their everyday life and everyday aspect, people changed the center of their world to themselves. From God to humans. They changed their shift. They changed their focus. Because, as Descartes declared it, I think, therefore I am. People are for sure, for sure that you exist because you think. You can't be 100% sure that you exist right now, with your senses and with the way you perceive the world and all of that. The one thing that everybody knows for sure is that you're here and you exist. But for people who don't believe, God is not the case. They don't know that God's here. So they changed their focus from God to humans. And as time kept on rolling down, people had a lot more time to think about things like philosophy, science, things like that, trying to study the world around them. But the thing people distanced further away as they got smarter was that, they stopped taking account of the gospel, and they kept on trying to solve the questions of like why we're here, all that, spirituality, things like that. People try to come up with answers for those types of questions without looking into the gospel, without taking account of God's words. And without the gospel, those questions are just unanswerable. They're impossible to solve. And those questions, they're not just, trivial questions. They're very important. Very, very important for people's souls, people's minds, and their lives. And when they couldn't solve it, people's lives got just a lot more emptier. Because they don't know why they're here. They don't know why they're alive. They don't know why they should be alive. And without God to answer that, people's lives got emptier and emptier. And another person that helped to develop the state of the world we're in right now was Kant. And what he did was that he took Aquinas' idea of God, being on a different level from us. He decided that proving the existence of God was not possible. Okay, and what he did was categorize the things that we know for sure in this natural world as the objective truth. And God, he shoved God down as some place that's not objective. It's something, God was now something ideal. It was just some type of belief instead of existing, living God. Okay. And with the idea that God is unnecessary and human rationality is most important, today's world, now we live in a place where there is no one undisputed truth. And people can only believe in things that they know for sure immediately. They can only trust in scientific data, even though science is constantly changing. It is constantly changing so quickly. And really, it's not that trustworthy if you take into account of things like that. But those things are the only things that people can surely trust in. And even then, there is no one correct truth. There is no one undisputed truth. And we're in a place where everybody's beliefs are supposedly just as valid as any, Technically, through this point of view, things like cults and just fake religions, things like that, they're just as valid and they're just as truthful as the gospel itself. And currently, with academic terms, the world we're in right now is in a postmodernist era. And that's how we came down to this situation we're in right now. Okay, and what Christians have to do in this world, and what they have to do in this situation they're in, is that in this world, we have to always examine our own faith, and we have to keep on sustaining it. You can't just like go to church because you've been doing it ever since you were a little kid. You can't just go to a church every Sunday because, you know, that's what you've been doing, you know. And if you did, your mom would get mad at you. You can't be doing that. What you have to do is that you have to do it because you really pursue the truth. You have to do it because you really want to know, you know, how we came down here, what is the truth, why do we live, why we're here, why we're born, and who is God, who is Christ. You gotta want to know those things for yourself, not because someone else is making you. If you just do it without your own purpose and just out of expectation, you know, where your actions are automatic, you know, out of habit instead of voluntary, because you really want to know the truth, you just live as another regular religion practitioner. It's something you always have to keep in mind in a world where, you know, nothing is real, you know, nothing matters. In a world like that, what you as a Christian always have to keep in mind is that you can't ever forget that Christ is God and Jesus had died on the cross for your salvation. And whatever the gospel tells you is the truth. That's one thing you have to always keep in mind, because this is the truth that will never be changed, no matter how much the world may change. Alright, that's all I have to share today, and I hope you'll stay strong and keep on pursuing God and never rest being a Christian. Okay, thank you all. I hope to see you all next week. Thank you.